look at that. I'll give you guys a little bit of a shot of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. You got our Packer Village there. Welcome everybody over there. We've got, that's like my man cave, and then here's where it starts. You can see the Bourbon Festival. I did a bunch of rearranging. You can see my painting right there. Everybody that's on Facebook isn't seeing it, but on YouTube you get a little extra. But you can see hung up the new Bourbon Festival 2024, and you can just see the whole studio. But I will load us in now and get this ready to go. Hopefully, then I'll check to make sure that everything is tracking. I got that. That's me direct. And I might have to move a little. Who knows? I might have to move my chair a little, or I might have to move the seat a little, but we'll check YouTube, make sure everything's working. I'm going to do that right now. That's looking pretty good, but we'll see. And then I'll be able to track everybody on YouTube. Lilton is watching. The views have been fantastic since I mean, we've gone from 2,000, the average of being like 2,500 to being 10,000, and it's crazy. So thank you everybody on YouTube and Facebook for watching. But let me go to YouTube here. I will turn down the sound, not the ringer. Silence the ringer. That's always good. And then to me, to here, to live. There we go. Now let's see if we got some. Hey, yep, Tater Dom is there. Welcome to live chat. Welcome everybody. Please, you and audio. Thank you, Tater. I'll just do the please comment where you are from and what kind of whiskey you like. What kind of whiskey you like. All right, we're set up. Send. There we go. Hopefully that works. And then I can monitor it. Hopefully, now the YouTube has just been doing so much better lately. I am so excited for tonight's podcast. We did pretty much everything we needed. The sound's working. The sound's working on YouTube. Sound's working on Facebook. We'll get going in a second. Tonight, we're going to talk about the difference between bourbon is whiskey, and like there's a saying that says all whiskeys are not bourbon, but bourbon is whiskey. So we're going to get into that kind of in depth tonight, but I'm also going to want this heart release from 2024. Thank you, Stacy Pritchard. She was able to pick this up for me, and I'm finally getting to it. Maker's Mark was there over the holiday with Roxy, and we were there with Roxy and Super Nash, and then met up with Randy and Walker. Walker is a great time. And yeah, well, we're going to get into all that about the rules of bourbon and everything, but we're also going to get in, Walker, tonight to the reason why actually bourbon tastes different than other whiskeys. I mean, there's some of the stuff that we're going to get directly once we start recording the audio, and we're going to be doing that in a second. Everybody on Facebook and YouTube, I'm going to open. I want to put this in. I'm just going to open this right now. I love the Maker's Mark. It's a great bottle with the dipping. When me, Super Nash, and Roxy were there, we got to dip a holiday bottle on the bottling line because we're there after hours. The bottling line is closed, so you can go right there. You don't have to do it in the gift shop, which I've dipped before. So now dipping on the bottle line. Now there is a short you all can check out on YouTube that does have the bottling line dip that I did, Roxy did, and Super Nash did. So check that out. So I got that. Maker's Mark is really done a really good job. This is their wood finishing series. It's called the Heart Release. The notes on this are caramel, chocolate, and maple. I mean, I don't know how much. This is one of 5 bottlings. And I mean, it's just what would you say? The oaks they used to make this one. I think what it is I had it before, but 10 virgin toasted French oak staves in this one. And that's kind of like double oaking, in my opinion. So we're going to get into that a little bit, but we're going to get into the podcast. I believe I'm ready to go. Let me grab my headphones tonight. I want to make sure everything's going good there once we get started. So I got that on. And then let's see. Hopefully that, once this gets going and we talk about the differences, we can really pull in some stuff. I'm ready for a fun podcast tonight. It's glad, John, you're John Ritz joining us. Walker's already there. A lot of people, but feel free to comment tonight because it's just me. And when it's just me, I like to have as much commenting. If we don't have a guest, a lot of times when we have a guest, it's kind of hard to follow the whole process. Uh, Dipped in blue and labeled for the Chicago. Yes. Actually, I think we did that for El Presidente. We got him a dipped in blue cubby Maker's Mark, and then we gave him the baseball bronze holder that holds the bottle like a baseball bat. It's pretty kind of cool. We did that for El Presidente Randy Prass, president of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, I believe 2 years ago. So, anyways, all right. So we're ready to start recording. What you're going to do is you're going to hear, what would you say? It's going to be a brief, quiet while the ad's playing for the audio version of the podcast. Then you're going to hear our Scotchy Bourbon Boys song, and we'll get going. All right, everybody. Here's to a great podcast.
Drinking bourbon, sipping on some scotch. We feel it a while, but it's sure fun to watch. We love what we do, we're drinking every brew is playing with our sunshine of the territory. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, raising some hell, making some noise. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, we're here to have fun, we hope you drink. We're here to have fun.
yeah, welcome back to another podcast of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Everybody, glad to be back this week. This is the week of oh my gosh, it's up there now. Come on, that's what I got this for. It's at 8:40 Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, January 14th. And welcome to this podcast. I look forward weekly, twice a week, to hang out with you guys, talk about. Yeah, there's no sound. Wait, that must be because of Randy. Well, I'll check it. Are we out of sound here? I don't believe so. Is everybody else hearing me? You hearing me, John? You hearing me, Walker? Let me know if you're hearing me. If Randy's just having technical difficulties, that's what I need to know. I know that we're getting good sound on there. It should be. I've got the microphone working. That should be working. Let me check. I'll check just to make sure. I'll flip over here on Facebook. I don't want you guys to. I'll get off of this. I'll go to Facebook and I'll go back here and I will monitor the sound. Let's see. No sound. Ready for just watching. I can hear you. You're good. Okay. So it must be Randy must not have sound on. There you go. Good. Okay. Good. We'll go back to YouTube now. All right, here we go. Yeah, that's it. Come on. Do I have to start this into? Let's go live. There I am, going in, moonlighting. Yeah, okay. That's what I do here. Why don't you try that, Malongish? Take your own advice. That's kind of like you're not allowed to do those on YouTube, and even if you could, I wouldn't be doing them. But here we go. Welcome to this podcast of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Very excited. It's tiny here tonight. We got a bunch of people in the house. Feel free to comment, leave stuff, and this should be a fun podcast. Tonight, we are going to be talking mainly about the differences between bourbon and other whiskeys. There's a lot of differences. There's reasons for it, and then there's preferences why some people like other whiskeys over different whiskeys. And, there's so much different between bourbon. The rules of bourbon, they always talk about the 5 rules of bourbon. We'll go over those. But right now, www.scotchybourbonboys.com for all things Scotchy Bourbon Boys. And this awesome Glencairn is there. If you want one, you can obtain one along with T-shirts. And check out us along with all of the information about us and anything you want to know. We update it for different times of the years and what we're doing, but you also can follow it straight through the podcast, and it's a lot of fun to do this podcast, and you're going to find out where we're going, what we're doing, where you can meet up with us, all the different festivals, and throughout the year. I'm looking forward to a great 2025. But also follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and X, and all the major podcast formats, including Apple, iHeart, and Spotify. But no matter how you listen, listen, comment, leave good feedback, and subscribe. That's just what we're looking for. The more you do that, the more people out there, the more people watching, the more people seeing. I want to say hi to everybody in India. I want to say hi to everybody in Indonesia, everybody in the United States tonight. But we get a lot of people from across the world. Hopefully tonight they'll leave. I asked them on YouTube to say where they're from. If you're new to this, cheers, Greg Schneider. If you're new to this podcast, make sure that you say hi on the comments, and then also let us know where you're from. We're starting that tonight. We are going to get into the intricacies of the differences between bourbon and other whiskeys. And we're also going to sip this wonderful bottle. Thank you, Stacy Pritchard, who's watching tonight, for this. You were able to pick that up from me when I was and came down and got it. I haven't opened it till tonight. I've heard really good things about it, so I wanted to pick a bourbon to sip on, and I wore my maker's mark. Yeah, like you're new. Stacy goes, "Hi, Louisville, Kentucky." Anyways, that is funny, Stacy. Anyways, I even imagined you saying it in a different, like in a happy, chipper way, not your normal Stacy way. Anyways, not that it's not happy, but it's usually not chipper. So, anyways, let's see. Let me 53 became friends with. Oh, that's nice. All right, and let's see. I wonder what that is. I gotta get that out of there because I'm losing the comments. There we go. We got Greg Schneider. He's here. He has a lot of information. So when I'm wrong or if I'm not doing everything right, I really want to get into it a little bit, all the details of making bourbon, and then all the details of what's the difference between Scotch, and Irish whiskey, Japanese whiskey. There's a lot of different rules for all Canadian whiskey, but one of the main rules for bourbon, and we're going to just start into it. And the number one main rules is it has to be at least 51% corn. So the one thing that is different than I would say now, if you're in Ireland and whatever, you could make corn whiskey. If you can't call it bourbon, you got to call it corn whiskey. You can make mash bills, but corn isn't a big grain over there. Their main grain of making uh, single malt whiskey over in Ireland and Scotch is barley. That's what they use there. Here in the United States, we use corn. Now, all I can tell you is now the other like Canadian whiskey, they could use corn and rye and wheat and barley, and you can make bourbon with corn, rye, wheat, barley, oats, but the corn has to be at least half of the mash. Now, if you're new to this, what is a mash? It's the percentage of grain that you cook that eventually goes into the fermentation process where the yeast then uh, eats the sugars from your cook and turns it into alcohol. So Maker's Mark is very unique as far as a bourbon. One of the things they do, not all of it, but they do their fermenting in cypress, wooden cypress fermenting vats, large cypress wood, and it's wood. It's really hard to keep up, and that wood is known for the ability to hold a mash and not leak and do all those things. And they've been doing it for a long time, but the cleaning and the maintenance is very, very costly and time consuming compared to a stainless steel uh, fermenting uh, uh, tub. And these tubs are anywhere, 45,000 to 60,000 gallons, depending on where you are. They make massive amounts of it just anywhere in the world. They're doing it, they're making it. But when I looked into the 51% corn, that was very important. Why bourbon, one of the main reasons why bourbon tastes the way it is, because corn ferments at a different temperature, a higher temperature. When it's being cooked, it's to break down its sugar. It ferments at the same temperatures, but when it's being cooked, to break down the starches and turn those starches more into sugar that the yeast can then convert into alcohol, it has to be taken at a higher temperature than the wheat or the barley or the rye. And each one is then, so you start off at I believe the temperature was, I want to say 185 for for the corn, and then you let it cool down to, I believe, in the 150s. I want to say 158. There's what, 56 to 58 for the rye and the wheat, and then you then let it cool further and add your barley, and then you let it cool to the 68, 67 degrees. It could have been 65. I'm not exactly sure, but you cool it down for optimum yeast uh, production. And yeast production is based off of the sugar that it eats. And the sugars that, or the starches that then, that's one of the things that the grains have in them. And some starch molecules are bigger than others. So 200 to 212 for corn typically. Thank you, Greg. So you added in at some people are, but there's cutoff points where corn has to be heated up so that it can uh, gelatinize the corn kernels, which then the sugars are released from the starch. Now the chains can be complex. Now there's a lot of reasons that you cut down, and when you get into the wheat and the rye, those starches they don't have as much starch, so they don't have to be as hot to release them. And then when you add the barley is the same thing. You don't whatever, but barley has other enzymes that's in it that's very important. That's one of the reasons why you're not going to see very many bourbons with no barley. So if you don't see a bourbon or a corn with no barley, well, you have to add enzymes, because those sugar chains, if they're complex, they will cause the yeast to convert it to alcohol, but not be as productive. And if the sugar chains are still too complex, they will have byproducts that aren't, what would you say, uh, aren't desirable for the flavor of the whiskey. So it's really kind of cool that the corn, when you're talking about bourbon and it being 51% corn, that's one thing very, very specific, in my opinion, that corn syrup, the sugars, it's a sugarier. Just think about it. It's like you look at the sugar that would be in wheat or rye that make bread. It's not nowhere near as sweet. So one, there's more sugar in it. That's why it's sweeter. And two, the more sugar you get, the more sugar. Yes, I know that, Greg. There's lots of people who have different specific specs based off of trying to get the different tastes that they're looking for in their whiskeys. I mean, I know that when you're talking about mellow corn, that you can actually smell the corn on that whiskey. I mean, so when you're distilling these sugars and it's converting to alcohol, there's still some of the flavors of each grain is still there when you finish up your distillate. Bourbon, bourbons are 72, 76. They're three quarters, and then they're, the other grains, and then a lot of them are lower on barley. I mean, there's a couple that use more, that it would be so they say a high rye bourbon, meaning that there's more 25, 26% rye, 12% barley, and then the corn's down a little bit. Still bourbon, but you got a little bit of that rye spice. And then there's other ones. I mean, I believe Old Elk has 34% barley and I believe 12% rye. I mean, yeah. And so it's basically a high barley bourbon. There's so many ways to do it, but bourbon, when you look at that, when you're looking at something like that compared to the other, let's get into this. This is where I wanted to get into the real quick, because I have the difference. The number one rule we already went over is let's go. Do you remember? I believe it's in the first part of this book. Yes. There it is. Yes, 51% corn. And then it's got to be the thing about bourbon to be called bourbon is produced in the US. Now, I'm not going to say as far as flavor, but being produced in the US in our farmlands there's a thing called terroir, and terroir is basically terroir is the where the grain is grown, positioning. Like if you grow barley on an ocean cliff where the ocean is constantly having moist air blowing across it, and it's going to get a little bit more rain being by the ocean, opposed to inland, not near an ocean. There's lots of studies done that those two barleys are going to react differently. Same thing, corn grown in the United States and wheat and rye have their own terroir depending on where what the soil's doing and whatnot. So that's why being produced in the US might seem different, but if someone's going to make bourbon, corn whiskey that they would call, they can't call it bourbon. They could say a bourbon like mash bill corn whiskey, and they could do everything, that all the rules, but it's probably going to taste a little bit different if the corn is grown in Europe or Russia or wherever they're producing it. And then the other one is you don't distill off the flavor of the grain, so you have to keep the temperature of the still, and you have to take this off at 160. Now, Greg might be able to answer the question for me when you're talking about taking it off the still at 160. Is it? I mean, if it goes above and you take it back down, is that possible once you have a percentage? Is there a way to adjust the still? Let's say it goes up to 170 and it drops back and you take it off at 160. Or I mean, if it's at 170 and then you drop it down to 155 and then in the end you're at 160, is that how it works? I mean, that's one thing that I've never asked as far as a question. But then put into a new charred oak container. Now, most of it's being put into new charred oak 53-gallon barrels. Some people do it in 10, 15, but the whole aging process consistently across Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, where you're doing these barrel aging, Pennsylvania, whatnot, you're pretty much doing it in the 53-gallon. You produces enough in one batch to sell a single barrel. You're talking about 180 to 240 bottles of whiskey out of one barrel. So that makes sense. You're playing around, it allows you to play around with bigger, barrel counts. You're dealing with more liquid. But you could put it in oak bucket, char it, put it in an open oak bucket, walk it across the room, as Jimmy Russell said once, pour it in a bottle, and then you won't be able to use that bucket again for any more bourbon. It's got to be new. So one of the that's not going to be very good, but you could do it and still call it bourbon. But one of the cool things about the oak, it's a new oak barrel, and that's very specific to bourbon. A lot of scotches, Canadian whiskeys, whatnot, they use used barrels to age their spirits. And when you're using a used barrel, you still have some of the flavor that was in it. A lot of bourbon barrels because you can't reuse them to make more bourbon, they get sold over to Scotland and Ireland, and they can use them all they want. Same thing up to Canada. They can use used barrels. Now, they have different rules about how long it has to be in there. I think Scotland is, well, I could get into that. These are put in the then you can't distill it more than 160 proof, and you have to put it in the barrel under 125 proof. You could distill it at 125 proof and drop it into the barrel. I mean, there's so many ways to do your barrel entry. Some people drop it in at 105. Some people drop it in at 115. What that does is that ensures when you're doing something and you gain proof or whatever, to take it back down to the proof that a lot of people you have to add water. There's different ways of adding water. You can add the water while it's still in the barrel. Some people do that. You add the water before. That means you're taking down your proof level. Let's say if you do it to 105. Now, how you take it off the still? You could take it off at 105, which means you're taking it off at a less higher alcohol content and putting it into the barrel. There's so many different ways to do it. And then it has to be free from additives. You cannot add any substance to bourbon other than water. So those are the 5 rules for making bourbon. Now, Scotch, that one you're talking about has to be produced in Scotland. It has to be made from cereal grains. Most Scotch is made from barley. Then made utilizing natural enzymes from the malted barley in its sugar conversion. It's so I need to get I'll grab this real quick. I can do this at the same time. I can monitor, and that was supposed to come on. There it is. All right, here we go. All right, I got that. So, made utilizing natural enzymes from malted barley in its sugar conversion, distilled to a maximum of 189.6, put into casks not exceeding 100 liters or 185 gallons for at least 3 years, and free of added substance other than caramel coloring. So you can caramel color Scotch. You can put it in a large, but no bigger than 185 gallons. 53 gallons is one, but they do make those. I think they call them bore barrels for at least 3 years. Now, it doesn't say a new oak cask, just an oak cask. So that's the difference right there. Now, Irish whiskey has to be produced and aged in Ireland, made from cereal grains. Again, mostly it's made from barley, fermented by the actions of yeast, distilled to a maximum 189.6, put in wooden casks, same thing for at least 3 years, and free of added substance other than caramel coloring. So Irish whiskey and Scotch are very similar. You got pot still Irish, malt Irish whiskey. This shows that the spirit was made in pot stills in a single distillery with only water and malted barley. So that's malt Irish, pot still Irish. I mean, you can add they do add some of the other cereal grains, but most of it's malted barley. And then you have blended Scotch and blended Irish whiskey. They're the same. Now, I believe Japanese whiskey has no legal definition, but mainly follows the style productions of Scotch. Canadian, produced in Canada, made from cereal grains, aged in Canada in wooden barrels for at least 3 years. That's it. They can add additives. So lots of differences in the rules. But when it comes to that barrel, you can put it in a new barrel, but usually they don't. They're usually putting it in used oak barrels. Now, one of the things when you put a bourbon in a brand new charred oak barrel, you are getting flavor from the char is going to work as a charcoal filter for bourbon. Then there is a place where the char ends and the wood begins, but the sugar caramelized. And then there's the wood. There's a lot of factors in the wood, flavors. Wood has medicinal components, and then you're dealing with that caramelized sugar that it's passing through every time it goes in and out into the barrel based off the heat. Now, that charcoal filter, if can do a lot. As Greg Schneider says, if it's good going in, it's going to be good coming out. Now, there is general consensus that the barrel can help something that's average, because those barrel flavors, adding that caramelized sugar from the wood adds, and then the different tannins and chemicals from the wood also. You pick up vanilla flavors, you pick up caramel flavors. I mean, sometimes with the right, if you're using the right yeast strain and everything, you pick up a lot of you're picking up a lot of those stone cherry notes and stuff like that. I mean, there's so much that you can pick up from the flavor of the barrel mixed with the distillate that you're putting in. And it's quite astonishing how well bourbon does in a brand new oak barrel in higher heat like Tennessee, but its aging is 6, 7. It's the sweet spot is anywhere between 6 and 7. But if you talk to some people, 10 and 12 is when it starts to where you 10-year and 12-year, you have to start paying attention to which barrels age a little bit slower and they can go further. So you got a lot of stuff to do as you keep going through that, you go through that. And I don't know how I lost my YouTube. I should go back to it. Let's go. Yeah, there it is. So it's been kind of, let's see. We don't have a lot. Okay. But so from the standpoint of that, of making that whiskey, uh the barrel being brand new compared to the rest of the world, that is one thing. And then the corn content of 51%. Those are the two real main differences. Now, what does that actually mean when you're drinking? So I've got a couple. I've got a Dewar's. I've got a Ferkellan 15-year, and I got a Hibiki Japanese whiskey. One of the things that when you look at these, now the Hibiki Japanese whiskey is probably the darkest of the three, but when you look at them, they appear to be more like a light beer, like a Miller Lite. They're really light in color. And then you've got bourbon, which is like more like you're getting into a dark amber or almost a Guinness kind of color. I mean, it's not quite as dark as it, but it's more like a dark beer. And the reason why you're picking up all that color is from the barrel, from that new barrel. They don't pick up as much color because they're using used barrels. Now, what's the purpose of using a used barrel? Why does Scotch and Irish? Well, because you can age it for 15, 20 years and you can put that age statement on it and it won't overdo it. It doesn't overdo it. So the age, especially in Canadian whiskey, you don't got a lot of heat happening up there, and you could put it in a used barrel. When you're drinking Canadian whiskey, it could stay pretty light for 20 years. I have one from Dave Schmier that was a really nice 20-year Canadian, and what he put out, and it was good. I mean, all these have their own, but one of the things that I'm going to start with, I'm not going to start now. Scotch is known for peat. So instead of getting a charcoal kind of flavor off of the barrel, like we do with bourbon, a char or whatever, they like to burn peat over the top of the barley as it's malting, and they're distilling, and also when they distill, they also blow the peat smoke over the distillates, so they pick up a smoky flavor. Some of it's really smoky, they do it a lot, and little. They control how much that they do in their whiskey. Now, there's a lot of people on this planet that absolutely love what they do with peat. I am not a person who loves a lot of peat. I don't mind a little bit of charcoal, but when you're talking about a charcoal from a peat, like you get in a Dewar's or you get in a Bricolati or you know, even what is it? It's called, I forget which one. It's a old grouse. That's what it's called, an old grouse. Good stuff, but it's getting a little bit of a charcoal flavor or a burnt flavor from that peat. Where bourbon doesn't do anything like that. It will pick up a char flavor from the actual barrel, depending how much you char it. But it also uses the barrel to filter out a lot of the impurities of the distillation process, where when you're doing it in a used barrel, that charcoal filter, if it's a used bourbon barrel, that charcoal filter's already been used and it's not as effective, and you're leaving it in there and it's not going in and out of the barrel as much. So I'm just going to take this Hibiki, which is a really, I enjoy this, but one of the things that's different about it is because it's distilled with malted barley and then fermented with yeast from over there. You take it and it's really, it's got a certain amount of smoky. You could tell this is probably aged in a bourbon barrel, but there's a little bit of peat, but there's also a certain amount of fruitiness. Now, I always find we have one of the other things bourbon has is what they call a Kentucky hug. Chivas Regal, it's okay. Someone asked me if I like it. I mean, it's not bad. I wouldn't say it's bad. Uh, it's a Canadian, and it's not 100% my thing, but I've had it, and I wouldn't say I wouldn't drink it. So that's what I think of Chivas Regal from West Philly Black. But this Japanese. Now, one thing that I will tell you, when you open up scotches, they will be a little bit fruitier on the initial pour. The longer they sit in their bottle, this one is picking up a little bit of a char, like a peat from it. This Japanese, it's been, I think I got this for my birthday, and it was 3 years ago. So it's 3.5 years old in this bottle. And it's not as fruity. It's a little bit more smoky than I remember. Now, I've got this Irish whiskey. It's a 15-year, and you can see when you get a 15-year, in my opinion, you get that 15-year, and it is light as it can be. I mean, it is yellow, like I said, a light beer. There's a little bit of darkness from that Hibiki. So I don't know what this has been in. I could try to see. Oh, let's see. 15-year-old Irish whiskey from a marriage of ex-bourbon and Madeira casks. Finished Irish grain whiskey, soft vanilla. It gives you other things. So on this one, I haven't had a lot, but it's finished in a Madeira, so it was aged in a bourbon barrel and finished in a Madeira cask. So this gets really, but still, look at that. I know you guys can't, though, on the Witch Call podcast, you can't hear it, but it's so light. I mean, when you're talking about bourbon, you're not talking about light. You're talking about a rich, dark, caramelish, brownish flavor, color. But there's something to be said about that 15-year, very affordable whiskey. Now, when I find on the 15, the Irish whiskeys are very lacking on finish, because the grain finish of barley to me is usually, it's hard for me to get a great finish off of a scotch or it's always a little bit bitter, a little bit like this finish with the casks, the Madeira cask is very dry. It's almost like a dry wine finish. So, but these are made from barley. They're single malts made straight from barley from the same. When you're talking about single malt, it's got to be from the same distillery, and the grains have to be distilled from the same season. So that's very important, because but now the reason why those rules are so important is because Scotch, is made and Irish whiskey is made in a lot of different places, few a few different places, and then sold to people who then put out their brands. And Dewar's is one where this is a blended whiskey. Now I'm going to open this. Oh, it was open. Now this is Dewar's, and it's they basically buy from multiple distilleries and blend it together. Now this is a lot more. These blends are so much more drinkable. They're Johnny Walker, Dewar's, very good whiskeys, but those people are blenders. They basically blend all different whiskeys together. They're a little bit darker in color, but it's still light. Now the Dewar's I don't even believe there's a blended Scotch whiskey. No age statement, I don't believe. Boop, boop. I'm trying to. Well, let's see if I can just see. Nope, no age statement. So it wins a lot of awards, though. Now that one is picking up the smokiness of a peat, but very, very lightly. So I always understand lightly smoked, peated blends, Johnny Walker, Dewar's. I get what they're doing. They're like taking what the cask isn't offering and adding it in. Where with the bourbon, it's like they add in So we're going to get down to also from a molecular. Thank you about my collection. You are Bolivian, right? I don't think you're asking me that. I'm an American. So anyways, this one, this is the one that is up here, and I'm going to go in our sponsors, Old Louisville. That is purchased barrels, and then once Amin down in Old Louisville has his barrels, he ages them further, and he might put them in other barrels too to finish them and age them. He might double oak them. He's basically a mad barrel chemist. Whereas Whiskey Thief Distilling, they basically distill, age, and then roll their barrels out and let you choose from 5 different barrels. And if you like it, you can use a Whiskey Thief and bottle it yourself. It's a barrel pick all day, every day, 7 days a week. Not closed. They are open every day. They also have another location in Nulu, but this one, the main one's in Frankfurt on the Three Boys Farm. And then the Spirit of French Lick in French Lick, Indiana. Alan Bishop was there and produced a good amount of whiskey. That's what's going out there, even though he's moved on. You got to check them out. And then also Rosewood Bourbon and Rise. Jason Giles is in the process of keeping that brand alive. So if you see it, get it. And if you're interested in getting any, contact him direct. Jason Giles is on Facebook, so you can messenger him and he will get back to you about getting you some of his whiskey. So let's go into the Maker's Mark now. Not gonna do the barrel banging. That's for you, Stacy. We are going to taste it though. I've been waiting to taste this for a while. The great thing about Maker's Mark, their gift shop is phenomenal. I was down there this past last, or was it? It was the 29th, the last weekend in December. Was down there. Holiday lights. It was in between Christmas and New Year, but the tour was spectacular. Frank, who is head of, I believe I don't know his official title. And we talked about his last name before, but I'm not going to remember his last name at the moment. Did a great job accommodating us. We were short one ticket, and we asked if we could get one more. And unlike a lot of different distilleries, we were there, and he said yes, and we had a blast. Me, Super Nash, and Roxy. That tour was one of the better tours. It was at night. It was 5:30 to 6:30. It had a tasting in their rick house. It had the tour of their place. There was bread pudding. There were carolers. The lights were spectacular. You got to dip your own bottle on the bottling line. You know, they had closed the bottling line down for the day at 5, but the wax was still hot. You got to dip it and then bring it back to the gift shop, purchase it. Plus, then they actually had bottles of the best bourbon on the planet is cellar aged. They did still have some of the heart release there at the time. I don't know if they still do. Walker, you might be able to say that, whether they do or don't. But this particular bottle, I opened it just a little bit, so it's been breathing. But the main difference is there's not fruity flavors in bourbon. There's a ton of fruit. Like I like white grapes. The Madura finish, it finished like a white wine. Then you've got the smokiness from the peat or that type of thing. And it's a whole different whiskey experience. Now, once again, no corn involved with these other whiskeys. They can make corn whiskeys that have a bourbon mash bill and whatnot, but they don't because they do the barley thing well. They grow it over there, and corn's not readily available to grow in the European culture. Uh, so you're also looking at corn being such a predominant grain in the United States. Between gasoline, bourbon, and eating corn, we do a good job with it. There's no doubt about it. Now, Maker's Mark, this particular bottle has the tasting notes. So they drop staves into some of their barrels after they've aged their 6-7 years, and this was dropping in 10 French oak toasted French oak staves into the barrel, and this was what this release was. So I'm going to have a halfway decent pour of this. I've been looking forward to this for a little bit. But the cool thing about Maker's Mark, one, they've gone back to all these type labels, which I think is cool as hell. I like the bottle shape too. They, for a while, were putting out a bottle, Maker's Mark Private Selects. They've gone to this bottle shape on Private Selects. I'm so happy. But once their cork is on and put in, there's a cork and put in, they dip it in wax. They dip it in a red wax that runs. So no other place that dips wax can let it run like this. This drip is patented. So that's really cool. But from a standpoint, this has been taken off the still at least under 160, put in the barrel at 125 proof, aged, for 6-7 years. And this is their wood finishing series. So this is then they take staves and put them in the barrels and to come up with the different flavors. Now I'm supposed to have the flavors of caramels, chocolate, and maple. So the nose on this, it's so different. You're getting sweet flavors and a lot of times now this proof on this, I want to say, what was it? Let's see. Can I get there? It was bottled June of 24. The proof is, it's 133 point. There's no way. Hold on. I got to look. Try it again. Let's see. 123. So that's decent. 30 code 32. No, wait. Let's try it again. Hold on. 113. That's what it is. 113. Sorry, folks, my eyes are kind of dead. Being 60, look at tonight. I left Honey Jack Daniels. Hey, you drink whatever you like. Where are you from? I'm not gonna. I will never any flavored whiskey out there. If people like that, I really think Wild Turkey does a nice job with honey also. But Honey Jack Daniels, that's great. I'm not gonna. You drink what you want to drink, and I believe it's Abdullah Dar. Where are you from? Just let me know. That's kind of cool. So now we get into the actual taste of bourbon. Wow. You're right. There's a ton of butterscotch. I got butterscotch. Hold on. Now, I will tell you, when you're talking Canadian whiskey, you're talking Scotch and Irish whiskey, their standard is 80 proof, which bourbon completely has blown Four Roses OESO straight rye whiskey. Cool. OESO is that's not a bad Four Roses, man. But when it comes to the bourbon flavors, where the Scotch is at 80 proof and the Irish whiskeys, they're fruity. And the Japanese, I get fruit with that peat or that char. Now, the Irish whiskeys don't do that. And so a lot of times you taste a flavor that's almost like a juice. Like the one there, that was a dry Madura wine, white wine. So when it comes to the bourbons with the corn, you're picking up a ton of caramels. And what is caramel? I mean, the definition, it's caramelized sugar, usually caramelized sugar from corn when you make caramel. So you put then a lot of times caramel corn, whatnot, but that caramelized sugar from corn produces that caramel flavor that is so prevalent in bourbon. Then you're dealing with way higher proofs. It's always been higher proof, but for the most part, lately, it has changed the whiskey industry. The reason why Scotch was losing out so bad here in the States is because of the proofs. Now you never would see a cask strength Scotch or a cask strength, you're not seeing those. You saw a lot of finished scotches and whatnot with wines and whatever. That's where they picked that up for bourbon, but you didn't see those proofs that you see. And if anybody, what's in the glass? If Feds wants to know, it's Maker's Mark. It's the Heart release from 2024, the first one of 5. That's what's in it right now. It's a bourbon, and we just went over researching with Independence Dave to use various spices of species of toasted wood to create many unique, delicious flavors. Greg, yes, they have, and I really believe you go on that tour, and they've really, really preserved. I think I like the Beam tour also. I mean, it's basically the same company. Centauri owns Beam and Maker's Mark, but Maker's Mark has that middle of nowhere, really, really unique, isolated feeling when you're there. So that's really kind of cool. That tour at Maker's Mark is, especially that at night. Now, I'm not saying I haven't had great tours at Jim Beam. I like Jim Beam, but it feels so much more bigger, and you feel the Jim Beam power on those tours, where with Maker's Mark you feel the family of those Samuels influence of from the 50s on. So there's that turn of technology feel to the uh what's the rating on it? Oh, Fez wants to know what I'm rating it. I have not rated it yet. But you feel that 1950s, when technology was just starting, where at Beam, they take you all the way back to the late 1700s. So it's a frontier feeling, where this is more of a modern aged, but ancient kind of whatever with how they do their labels. They've always done their labels the same on a press that's from the late 50s, early 60s, and they still create the labels there on those type presses. They haven't, and they do it right there on site. Um, so it's a really unique experience, well worth it. There's no doubt, and it's beautiful. The grounds are absolutely stunning out there. It represents Kentucky in so many different ways. So, is that, let's see, what's his name? Fez wants me to rate it. Okay, so if I was gonna barrel bang it, we do that, but that's based off of 4 categories. You could give each one 4. 2 of them you can give 5, and one specific category you can give for a special but up. You could give up to 19 out of 18 points. So if I'm gonna be honest, the nose, I should basically, I'm picking up too much. Let me see if I can get something else here. Yeah, I'm gonna just pull this out of nowhere, and I'm gonna put some in there. I'll drink that a little bit later. Let me see if I can get the nose. I'm getting too much of. I picked up. I poured it in the glass that had the Scotch, the Doers, and when you do that, you can know exactly what you do. So let's put those out. We talked about the differences. Get those out. We're on here. Get that over here, and then I'll nose. There's a lot of caramel, but there's a little bit of ethanol. So if I was to rate the nose, I would give this 3 barrel bashes out of 4. Now, let's try that one more time. It's fantastic viscosity at 113 for a Makers. I'm excited. This isn't like a private select where there's all different. This is one specifically with these oaks. So we are talking about like a double oak. And ooh, there we go. If you're talking, that's a really nice mouthfeel. I would give this, as far as the viscosity, or oh my god, the body, I would have to give it a 4 on the body. It's pretty good. Now on the taste of this, if you like a oaky Chardonnay, you're going to absolutely love this. But for me, it's weird. So you pick up the caramel, and then there's this like fresh apple thing that happens before it turns to chocolate. And then it finishes like Jack Daniels. That maple that you're talking about is exactly the finish on Jack Daniels. So if you love Jack Daniels, in my opinion, and I'm going to say, what Walker, I'm going to ask you, what do you think I'm going to say that's unique. I do like Jack Daniels. I don't love Jack Daniels, but this is a version of it with chocolate and caramel. So let me do this one more time. And then it finishes caramel. I mean, chocolate, dark chocolate. So I'm going to give it a 4 on taste. So I would give it 3, 4, 4, 8, 11. And the finish, so I give this a 15 of 18. What makes it 15 of 18 is the taste. I would say, if I'm being honest, this hits home as a really so Maker's Mark a lot of times is really caramely. And I love that about Maker's Mark. This isn't overly caramely. And the chocolate leading into the maple, leading back to the chocolate, it tastes a lot more like a big Kentucky bourbon, opposed to the dessert bourbons that I refer to that are always sweeter, more caramely based off the corn. But this one holds its own to be a damn good bourbon, just straight bourbon. So you're right, Walker. It has a lot of dark chocolate. At least it's not leather. I don't. It could have leather and oak flavors that dark chocolate takes over, which I like. And the spice you refer to as spice, I just refer to it as general bourbon flavor. There's a couple Cave Hill, Jim Beam. When you're drinking regular Jim Beam or you're drinking Cave Hill, you're drinking bourbon that's not too sweet. It's not a dessert bourbon. It's not whatever, and it just has a flavor. And there's a little bit of sweetness, but it's it's right behind what you would think when you're in a rick house and you smell all those bourbons aging, what bourbon should taste like. So that's what I give it a 15 out of 18. Is that good enough? It's a good bottle, Fez. I mean, honestly, if you're at Baker's Mark, I was there the last weekend, so 2 weekends ago, and I would definitely pick this bottle up if I didn't. It was there, and I didn't have to pick it up because I already had it. Glad I opened it. At a 113 proof, it does the trick too. It's pretty nice. So I don't know why I did that. I'm gonna put that in there. So I gave it a nice rating, and uh we should end this for the audio, but everybody on Facebook and YouTube, if you want to hang out, I have no problem with everybody hanging out for a little bit longer, but the audio, we got to stop recording in a sec. I got to finish this up. So I hope I was able to give you guys a little bit of guide to the difference between bourbon and other whiskeys. I mean, even if you drink Crown Royal, there's an aspect of that used barrel that they can use and the aging in that colder climate that doesn't make it such a dessert whiskey. Plus, its proof is not like what a lot of bourbons are, which is fine. Okay. And I'm not going to say Crown Royal is a bad whiskey, but when you're talking Canadian whiskey, you just don't have quite as much complexity in the flavors. It's more of that one standard flavor. What else did we try, Fez? Let me finish this up real quick with ending it, and then stay on because on YouTube and Facebook, and we'll keep going for a little bit longer. Everybody know that this is not the end of Facebook and YouTube. All right. So uh, remember, everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. That was a lot of fun. Greg Schneider. Hey, Matt. It was wasn't his favorite expression. We could talk about that once I'm gone. Walker, thanks as always. Greg Schneider, I really appreciate it. John Ritt, all the people, even Fez on YouTube, I really appreciate. Is a good drink. Yeah, I agree. But for right now, we're going to end the audio part of our podcast, but not YouTube and Facebook. We'll keep talking because YouTube is on fire tonight. So I'm really excited about that. And so remember, everybody, thanks for joining us. We have a bunch of stuff coming up. March 7th, we will be at Maker's Mark with Rob Samuels doing a podcast live on that Friday. Also, hopefully, Saturday, February 1st, we're going down to Middle West. We haven't been there in over a year now because I just got the notice on Facebook last week that it's been a year. And we'll see what Ryan Lang has set up a year later because I can't wait to get down there. His vision is fantastic. Great owner. What's happening there? We'll update you on that on Saturday, February 1st. And just coming up, we will be doing a couple different podcasts and tasting. We got Penelope to taste. We've got Heaven's Door coming up. So those are all the different things that are happening in the future. But make sure that you check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X, and also all the major podcast formats, including Apple, iHeart, and Spotify. If even if you're a gamer on Deezer, we're there. You find a place to listen to us, we're there. Watch us. It's great. Remember, no matter what, like, listen, comment and subscribe and leave good feedback. It's very much appreciated. We keep growing. We love the audience. We love you guys. This is why we do it, so you guys can see what the difference, come up with great subjects. If you have anything you want us to cover, let us know in the comments. And then also remember that www.scotchybourbonboys.com is for all things Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Mainly get one of these Glencairns. These are awesome drinking. These are awesome tasting glasses. I love them, and I love to send them out to friends. Sent one out to Robert, two out to Robert today. And just remember, good bourbon equals good times and good friends. Make sure you don't drink and drive. Drink responsibly and live your life uncut and unfiltered. Little Steve-O's gonna take us out. Remember, Facebook and YouTube, I'm not leaving.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you, I tell you, I tell you we must die.
All right, we're off. I'm gonna hold on. Don't need to do audio magic. I'll improve voice quality. Okay, improve clarity. And then I'm going to save this real quick. You guys hang on. Publish to Randy Ford asked me a question. Hell yeah. I would love to try the new Woodford Reserve Double Oak. I saw that released today. Oh my God. Are you coming up? Are you bringing it? All right. Publish to uploading. Let me just quick. All right. I just got to save this, get this saving for going up tonight on audio. We're still live on Facebook and YouTube. Please don't back off. We're still going to be talking. I'm just gonna call this Maker's Heart. All right, there we go. Scotchy Bourbon Boys, save. All right, so we're going good there. So everybody on, my eyes are just frying out tonight. But so yes, oh, you got 8 bottles. How do you get 8 bottles? Where did you go? I'm not even gonna ask that question, Randy. Oh yeah, I do. I 100% I do. Put me down. I'm gonna like. So I gotta get you. Is there any way I could get you anything? Have you had this steak collection? Because Penelope sent me that. That's going out. Sent that out to Super Nash. That's kind of cool. And that's going out. But anybody on YouTube, what do you guys try? But Randy, that's phenomenal. Matt, what you been up to? Alberta Premium Cask Strength is my go-to Canadian. Alberta Premium Cask Strength. You should if we you just put that on the list of what I'm going to taste when I come back up there. Okay, the OHLQ single barrel pie. It just quit rubbing it in there, Matt. You're rubbing it in. Fez, thanks. I really appreciate you watching. I don't even know what that is. That's a microphone and a bunch of things. Yeah, thanks. I sub and I'm for it, man. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Yeah, on YouTube. So you were asking what else did we taste? Okay, so tonight we tasted some Dewar's. That's there. I'm not going to cover myself. Dewar's is a blended Scotch. We tasted a Madeira finished for Cullen Irish whiskey, 15-year, which was, and then we also were tasting Beaky, which is another Centauri product, which is a Maker's Mark. I mean, same place. That's really kind of cool. And then I didn't taste the Whistler, but I have it here. Another Irish, but this is I want to say I got the single cask series, and this was I believe I picked up the rum cask. I want to say a Barbados rum cask finish. There's what we were tasting tonight. Fez tonight on the podcast that were other than bourbon. And we kind of went into all the definitions of all the different bourbons. And this I agree with you, Matt. I probably would want to taste the cookie butter pie. I mean, did you get one? That's the question. I look for that. The one thing is that's the first one that Private Select was the first Private Select that wasn't in a Private Select bottle in the state of Ohio. And I really wanted it, but it wasn't anywhere around it. And I can't go across the state. I just ended my 2 dry weeks. I'm shipping on some Rio. Hey, also, oh, you got some Rio. That a couple people, I think actually Spanky, Matt, you have to be introduced to Spanky because he wants to try Rio, Penelope Rio. And the Penelope I got was the estate collection. And the estate collection is freaking phenomenal. Seriously. My wife loved both of them. Doing a podcast on that because Penelope sent that up to me. And then there's a actual dinner with Danny down in Dublin, Ohio, which is about 2 hours from me. So it's 3 hours from you. It's on Thursday, January 23rd. It's $40 a person, but Danny Polisi, Danny Polisi is coming up, and he is coming up from Penelope. He is their blender, and he is hosting a 6 to 9 event. $40 a ticket, but if you want to go, we should go. I'll drive down and then drive up, and then you just have to drive home on that Thursday. But we'll just, if you want to go, let me know. I'll get 2 tickets. I'm looking for someone to come. CT doesn't look like he can do it because basketball is basketball. And this is basketball season. So we got to do whatever we got to do during basketball season. So you should think about that because that should be pretty good. No, I did not get Havana, but I got a steak collection. I mean, come on. It's always good when Luxco distributors send you stuff and then you get to do podcasts. I actually sent 200 milliliters both. I'm free on the 23rd. I'll text you. Yes. And I'll get I'll get 2 tickets. I'm just looking for someone to go. I mean, I know it's 2 hours down, 2 hours back, 6 to 9. You got to leave. You'd have to be here like about 3:45, and then we'd leave, and then we get down there and we do our thing from 6 to 9, and then get back about 11, and then you'd be home by midnight. I'll understand that's a Thursday night, but let me know. So, anyways, it's been awesome on YouTube. I'm gonna cut this off. It doesn't seem we got we went up to 10. I'll keep it going. Thanks for everybody on YouTube joining us. So did everything work out, Walker, for leave? Also, Walker, when I'm done, give me a call. That will be cool. We had their 10-year estate collection. Penelope, let me see if I can take off the 24th. So why do you have to take off the 24th to get home and just suck it up? We'll have fun, but we'll get back in a couple hours. You drive whatever, and you'll be okay. I'll definitely make sure it's all okay. And by the way, Matt, your beast mode picture was awesome wearing the Scotchy Bourbon Boys t-shirt. One of the coolest freaking shots I think ever tasted. No, I got the estate collection that I had was the single barrel, and then I had the 10-year. Yeah. And so this is so good, this Maker's Mark. All right, so everybody on YouTube, I'm going to cut it off. Thank you for joining us tonight. I think YouTube was one of the, it's going to be higher than it was last time. I think we're over. This should be pretty cool. It's going to be cool to see. Thank you, everybody on YouTube. Thursday night, I think it's going to be, it just depends. It's going to be Heaven's Door, but unless Heaven's Door jumps in and we set something up going forward. But I think Heaven's Door is what we're going to be doing on Thursday night. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And until next time, remember, good bourbon equals good times and good friends. Don't drink and drive. Drink responsibly and live your life uncut, unfiltered. Good night, YouTube.